Welcome back to What It's Really Like to Be an Entrepreneur. I'm Vincent Lanci, speaker and author of the book Left for Dead, A Story of Redemption. Want to know what it's really like to be an entrepreneur? Well, you came to the right place. You will hear real-life, authentic stories from entrepreneurs grinding on each episode. My goal for this podcast is to let you know that giving up is never an option. If you missed last week's episode, be sure to download it after you tune in today. Before I introduce my guest, I will share an entrepreneurial story to inspire you all. I caught an awesome write-up on George Eastman on the biography site. This New Yorker was born in 1954 and left his job at the bank after starting his photography company in April 1880. In 1885, he went to the patent office with a roll holder device that he and the camera's inventor, William Hall Walker, developed. Cameras were allowed to be smaller and cheaper because of this device. His first camera was called the Kodak, that came with 100 exposures and a box camera that was sold first in 1888. He felt that products should have a free identity that is separate from anything else, so there came the name Kodak. This entrepreneur is one of true status, as he wasn't content and soon delivered the first Brownie camera, which was meant for children. When 1927 arrived, he was the largest company in the industry in the entire United States. Hey, Sosh, did you know anything about the story behind the Kodak?
That's the first I heard. That's a good story.
Yeah, so my guest today is somebody that I've known through my buddy Brian. I met him about 10 or 15 years ago as he was dating his sister, and you fast forward to now, I have worked for one of his startup entrepreneurial opportunities, and since he has now embarked on another journey, please allow me to introduce Sosh Andriano.
Hello.
Sosh, why don't you share your story and a little bit what you're working on today?
I grew up in the hospitality industry. My father owned a number of restaurants when I was 8 years old. I started bussing tables and washing dishes for him, and actually at the grand opening of his very first restaurant, he made me dress up as a shark. It was a seafood restaurant. My mother was a puppeteer, so she was able to whittle this shark outfit together, and I stood outside handing balloons out at the grand opening. And of course it was like 110 degrees that day, and I remember coming inside saying, "Can I please come in? It's very hot." And my father going, "Get out there and hand out the balloons." But the lesson I learned that no matter what, you better be out there going ahead and building your business one guest at a time. So that was my harsh introduction into business back then.
Well, that's a great story for sure. It's definitely going to resonate with a lot of people. But now we're going to do the Big Five, Sosh. Each episode, my guest and I go over these 5 questions to help them learn what it's really like to be an entrepreneur. So the first question for you is, when did you realize that you weren't happy with what you were doing, or that you just needed some kind of change?
Well, I think that is an ongoing question that I think any entrepreneur or anybody who's goal-oriented should ask themselves constantly, short-term and long-term. But if you're asking the question, when did I realize that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I would probably say it was like 17 years old. I mean, I can go back as far as when I was a kid, with the iced tea stands, or even in high school throwing keg parties and trying to make money off of that. Although probably not the most conventional way to do it. But there was always, I wanted to create an experience for people. And, with that, if you can bottle up experience or something that people want and give it to them, that's the product that people want. But I remember when I was around 17, 18 years old, my father asked me, he said, "What are you going to do when you get older?" I said, "I'm an entrepreneur." And he said, "You're not an entrepreneur, you're a kid." I said, "Gee, thanks." But that kind of drove me a little bit more. I wrote my first restaurant concept when I was 18 years old, and I wish I still had it because I did it on loose leaf paper, and it must have just been horrendous. But, that's kind of when I set off on my journey, and I started to really hone and learn my craft. There's a couple of different phases for entrepreneurs to be aware of. One is you pick an industry, you go into it, and you learn as much as you can on that specific trade. And then all of a sudden, after years and years of trying to master the trade and become master at it, because you probably never will be a master at it, then all of a sudden you have to pivot to an asset and liability manager. And so after all these years of learning hospitality, and all the day-to-day that goes into it, I now only spend 10% of my time doing that trade, and the other 90% is focusing on managing our assets and managing the liabilities of the company. And that is a very difficult trade to pivot away from. And that where I think is a lot of young entrepreneurs get hung up at, is that, it's not just about, focusing on your trade. So beware of what you wish for. If you do become successful, there's a lot that goes into it.
Well said, well said. Out of all those things we kind of just talked about briefly, sum it up to the two most difficult parts of being an entrepreneur, if you had to narrow it down to two.
People.
What do you mean by that?
The different personalities.
Right.
Not so much the consumer. I mean, if you're going to be in the type of business where it's people business, you really have to do it because you're passionate about it. And it's one thing that I'm passionate about. I really, integrity of providing a service to our guests is everything in the world to me. And I've lost sleep, countless nights of sleep, over wondering if I've compromised, their experience. I mean, eventually I've just had to try and make my peace with it. I do the best that I can. But it's not so much the consumer. Consumer's always right, and I will always do, honestly, whatever they say. Yep, you got it. I'm going to learn from it, and we're going to evolve to meet their expectations. It's internally is what the challenge is. We have 75 people on our team during the peak of our season, and they got 75 personalities and 75 goals and 75 things going on in their lives, and you have to try and create one common thing that everybody's working towards. So that's a challenge. And the other challenge is really it's managing the asset. It's management of money is a very difficult thing. I mean, a profit and loss statement is, to me, math is the one universal language that we all speak. And if you're a business person and an entrepreneur, you need to learn how to read profit and loss fluently. And, that's a language, and it's telling you a story, and you need to read through it and dissect what it's telling you. You need to hear it. You need to manage it, evolve to it, and give it what it needs. And that's a tough thing, and it takes many years of experience.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of lessons in there what you just shared, so thank you for that. If you had to pick one of your greatest failures, Sosh, what is it, and what did it teach you?
So when I was 28 years old, my father and I worked together for many years. We had our first place together when I was 23, and I don't think any 23-year-old really is ready to have responsibility at that time, but it was a good experience, but that's not really the one that stands out. When I was 28, I took a hiatus from the hospitality industry for a few years, and I went into finance. And it was great because I learned a lot about banking platforms and trying to understand the math and science of finance and business. But I was still missing my hospitality industry, so I had developed a restaurant concept on paper. And I went out shopping for an investor, and I found one. And they had signed on to a 10-unit deal with us, and it was very exciting. And there was 3 of us, and we each owned a third of the company. Now, the one thing that I learned back then is even though we each owned a third of the company, whoever has more money really is running that company. And that was a painful lesson that I had learned. The 2 guys I worked with were mega millionaires, and I was, worth $800 a week at that time. And, we had disputes. And again, being very passionate about what you're doing, you are always trying to do what you think is the best decision for the company. But, people have their own agendas. And, I really should have went into that specific situation with eyes a little more wide open. And, it turned out to be a business venture that didn't work out in the long run for the partners. I was able to learn a lot from it, which ended up serving me well, and get out, without any real harm. But, you go into a business with your eyes wide open. You gotta really see. You gotta see every angle.
A lot of learning opportunities, though, in the failures is the way to look at the bright side of all of that. If you could choose one entrepreneur, Sosh, dead or alive, to have a conversation with throughout history, who would it be? What are you talking about?
I would go back to the mid to late 1800s, early 1900s. I want to talk to the titans of industry. I mean,
Love it.
what they walked into, just total uncharted territory. And they had a vision and they saw something. And it was at a time that the government couldn't really understand what was going on. So laws and legislation was being written at that time just to combat them. They were able to, maneuver themselves through those landmines at that time. And that's just amazing. I mean, that really are the founding fathers of the industry as far as I'm concerned.
That's a great answer. No one's given me that as far as I've been interviewing people to start season 1 of this show. I couldn't agree more. So let's talk about your future with your entrepreneurial endeavors, Sosh. Let's look 1 year from today and let's look 5 years from today. Where do you hope to be 1 year from today? What do you have going on 1 year from now?
So our new project is in the QSR quick service restaurant project, and this is our third venture right now, and so I'm trying to diversify the company's portfolio from the brewery, which is distribution, the on-premise destination of the Whale's Tail, which is just a giant, and the new project Lota Veco, which is really meant to be just a simple, easy operation that provides something that I think people are looking for specifically in that location. And that's taking food that is familiar and not too standoffish and scary, but it's healthier, and that you have options where you can start off with a gluten-free and a vegan base and then add on to it. And yet in the fast casual thing is we wanted to kind of put it in a situation was a little bit more comfortable and luxurious as opposed to traditional fast casual, which is a little bit more industrial and cold. So, the demographic that we're targeting is the ladies, and, obviously, anybody who really wants to be healthy. But right now we're seeing a lot of, the moms in the middle of the afternoon that are coming down, and that's an exciting thing. So if I'm really to fast forward a year from now, the goal is to have accumulated enough data from this first store, which is as a prototype. We made sure that we picked a location where the rent structure was very, very fair, where we couldn't get hurt, to really accumulate the data to see if it's something that has the potential to become kind of a multiple unit type of situation. If I fast forward into 5 years from now, I think the goal would be that we might find ourselves maybe having 5 units of this particular concept.
Of the new restaurant you're talking about.
Of the new restaurant. The Whale's Tail is a beast into its own right.
Let's tell them about what Whale's Tail is.
Well, the Whale's Tail is the Whale's Tail. The story of the Whale's Tail is pretty cool. We are here tucked away in a marina in the North Shore of Long Island, and this marina was kind of sitting here as a, I'd like to say a bureaucratic little playground for many years, where the wealthy of this community could come and have their boats, and they were looking for amenities. So there was a snack bar on the property at that time that was here to service those members. And, my father had come here for a year, had a 2-year contract, and to kind of run this little deli / snack bar. And I was exiting out of that Massapequa restaurants, which I had told you about before. So he said, do you want to come do this with me? And we haven't worked together in a number of years, and I was not really pumped about working with family again. But I said, I'll do it. Just give me exclusive control. And we came in here on the swipe of a credit card with $30,000 only, because that's all I had at that time. We built this business. And our first year we did 400,000, and then we did 750, then we did $1 million, then we did 1.3, then we did 1.7, then we did 2, then we built a brewery, then we did 2.5, and it's just an incredible story, because throughout that process, we had to rezone this property, so we litigated for 3 years. And I got to tell you, that's the asset and liability part that I was talking about, is that, nothing can prepare you for that. I mean, for the second time in my career, I was faced with possibly losing a business. And that's scary. And those are the things that will test the patience of an entrepreneur, guaranteed. It will beat you down with a baseball bat. And just when you think you can't take any more, it'll come and beat you even harder. But it's the resilience. It's looking at yourself every day and saying, you are not going to beat me. You're not going to best of me. It's a special breed of people. I have to tell you, I've met many entrepreneurs and business people, and we all have one common thing. And that's, we will not take failure. It's not an option. You will get up and you'll constantly plow forward. And the whale's tail is kind of a coronation of that. It's an example of hard work. Now it's just given us an opportunity that it is the foundation for what this company can do now in the future. We've been able to collateralize our assets and build other ventures. We built the brewery 2 years ago, which has tripled in production this last 12 months, which is exciting. So that's something that over the next year to 5 years, we're looking to continue building specific brands and focus on distribution. And the whale's tail always has an opportunity to possibly, as part of the portfolio of the hospitality group, to maybe do another venture like it. Although I can say, when you say the things that are the most difficult, again, being the people, the complexity of this specific operation is not something that I want to necessarily duplicate. So, we want, as entrepreneurs, to keep things as simple as possible. Always keep it simple, stupid, as cliche as that is I gotta tell you from experience. Without that, you're in trouble.
Sosh, thanks a lot for all the lessons you gave everybody listening in today. I really enjoyed your journey from the beginning and how you kind of took something from nothing, developed into now 3 different locations. You got the brewery, the whale's tail, and Lota Veco. It's time for the last word. Sosh, is there one thing you didn't get to touch on today that you want to share with everybody listening on?
Just don't give up. I mean, passion is what fuels your success, but keep in mind, passion creates impulsivity. And that's not necessarily the best formula for business. You need to be patient, you need to be methodical, but you need to believe in yourself, always.
Awesome.
Good luck.
Awesome, Sosh. Go ahead and share your social media, website, or ways for our listeners to come check out your locations, support you on the web.
Yeah, whalestailnpt.com. Then we have our link to Harborhead Brewery in Northport. And LotaVecoNPT.com is our newest. Come check it out. It's awesome. Good luck, everybody.
All right, everybody. You can follow the show on Instagram to stay up to date at your favorite morning podcast, and on Twitter at Podcasts by Lanci. My handles are at Vincent A. Lanci on all social media and YouTube, and my website is VincentALanci.com. Make sure you grab my book, Left for Dead, A Story of Redemption, on Amazon, and DM me or email me. Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed today's episode, please continue listening and rate what it's really like to be an entrepreneur 5 stars for me, as I try really hard to find you value delivering stories on each episode. As always, I will end the show with a quote that inspired me, and I know it will for you too. When the sun is shining, I can do anything. No mountain is too high, no trouble too difficult to overcome. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of What It's Really Like to Be an Entrepreneur.